Hello everybody. Can you hear the music? All right, coming at you soon. Here we go. Folks, it's good to see you all. As I was playing, I was looking at the live chat. I'm going to pop this out now. And this is one of my favorite parts of doing these, is just seeing where everybody's from. Mount Vernon, Washington. Thibodaux, Louisiana. Maryland, Oregon. New York City. Idaho. British Columbia. Canada. Florida. Southwest Virginia. Wet as heck. Cindy. Jim from San Francisco. Richard from Utah. Sorry if I forgot your name earlier. London. Eileen from London. Frank. Oh, no, that's Cindy. Frank. Hey, Frank. Tom, I think you said you're from British Columbia. All right. And Panama. Yacht Matador. All right. Steph in Panama. It's the first time somebody's been here from Panama. Catherine from San Francisco. Oh, hey, Catherine. Maybe I'll see you the next time I'm up there. Lewis from Rochester, New York. Linda from North Carolina. Thank you all for saying that. And about to get started with this session. Just a few opening comments, and then we'll get going. Alrighty. So I guess we'll just get started. Oh yeah, the only main thing I want to start with is that, and just say that if you're new to these office hours, what I do is when we're done with it, me and the editor Yuri, we kind of put together a page where all the questions are indexed, so you can go back and you can quickly find a question that you want answered. And I think that's helpful for people, because then they don't have to wade through the whole video. And usually it takes a while. It's a time intensive thing, so it takes a little while to get that. But so just stay tuned for that. And then what also, just in case you don't know, I put links to further lessons and then outbound links to other things that might be useful for you there. Okay, so we're just going to jump into the first question, which comes from John in South Charleston, Ohio. Thanks for your question, John. He says, I try to practice an hour a day. Excellent. Going on with the question. How much of that time should I devote to learning a new tune, and how much to reviewing what I already know? So this is a really good question, and I'm going to give a bit of a wishy-washy answer. By the way, Yuri, if you're watching, please don't edit the question page right now because it's distracting. Thank you. So anyhow, let's see. So an hour. So basically, he's asking how to. Sorry, I got thrown off a little bit. So there's no one practice routine that's going to work for everybody all the time, and I like to kind of design different routines to help with different things. But it just depends on who you are and what you're doing and what your goal is. So, but what I'm going to do is offer a good basic routine for John, who's practicing an hour a day, and then suggest a few other ideas. So one is the thing I just came up with this morning while looking at some of the questions and looking at this one was the 20-20-20 practice for John. So basically 20 minutes for technique, 20 minutes for reviewing tunes you already know, easy tunes, and 20 minutes to work on some new tune. Again, this is not some like hard and fast thing. It's just to add a little structure. And people's minds are different. Some people may really benefit from doing being very precise with like, I'm going to just set a timer and practice technique for 20 minutes. By technique, I mean whatever you're working on, the D major scale, string crossing, or whatever, some bowing thing, and then review. So part of the review process, so if we're going to do 20 minutes for review, part of the review process could be just sort of warming up with easy tunes. So just think of like the easiest tunes you know, and maybe just use those as a simple warm-up, like Oh Susanna. Whatever it is, just something to get your hands moving, and always coordinate that with the scale. So whatever you do, like you could kind of make big chunks. You could do a 20-minute chunk of technique, 20-minute chunk of review, 20-minute chunk for the new tune. But what I think is useful is a learning principle called interleaving, in which you say you're working on some really difficult new thing, like the Orange Blossom Special. So that's really hard, say. Or you're working on vibrato, or you're working, whatever it is that's challenging for you. It may even be just playing third finger. So what you would do is you would warm up, you would work on that difficult thing, and then you would let it go for a little while, and you'd go back and you'd do something different. So if vibrato was or let's stick with the Orange Blossom Special example, you can leave that behind and just go work on some scales, like maybe the A major scale. 2 octaves. And then after doing that for a little while, return to that really difficult thing, the Orange Blossom Special in this case. And in that way, you're interleaving that difficult thing. And that means that it's gonna make for more productive practice time. When you return to that, it'll be a little easier, most likely. Your brain will have a time to kind of process what it learned first time it did it. So this is basically just a long-winded way of saying that it's not always optimal to just do a huge chunk of your technique, huge chunk of review, huge chunk new tune. You may want to spread it out a bit, but then roughly you could think about splitting it in thirds. So maybe for the first 15 minutes you do 5 minutes of technique, 5 minutes of review, 5 minutes new tune. Then you take a little break, stretch. This is key, actually stand up if you've been sitting down, or vice versa. I like to do forward bends, and then 1 minute break is a really good part of a routine. So anyhow, so that's a super general routine, 20-20-20, and I'm going to think about it some more. I just came up with the idea, but basically split any practice section into thirds. You would spend a third of your time on technique, 30 of your time on review, and then on something new. And then you could do those little chunks of practice multiple times in a session. 15 minutes. 15 minutes is nice because it's easy to divide by 3. 30 minutes. Then you could do 10, 10, and 10. Take a little break. Another 30-minute. Does that make sense? All right. So, and then just two more notes on kind of coming up with a cool routine that works for you. So another idea, if you're practicing an hour a day, you're working on new stuff, maybe at the end of the week, instead of doing something new, just spend that one whole practice session doing a review routine. Go back to older things and really just strengthen things you already know. You could do, and again, some people might prefer to do this once a month. Some people once a week. Just spend a day not doing the most challenging thing, just going over stuff you haven't done in a while that you want to get back up and running. And then the more you play, the more stuff you will have. You'll kind of have to organize even that. You may even have to say you've been playing a year and 50 tunes. It'll probably be difficult to do all 50 in one practice session. So you might have to just organize, well, I'm going to do all the tunes with double stops, or I'm going to do all the tunes in D Dorian scale, whatever. You'll just have to, the more stuff the more you'll have to organize how you review. Okay, so when I do the notes for this lesson, I will include links to some practice routines I've already designed, and I might make a new one for this, just thirds. I'm just thinking, it's funny how you learn things as you go. So I'm thinking that I originally was thinking 20-20-20. Now I'm thinking it's just thirds. So, okay, so stay tuned for that. Cool. So I'm going to do a few more questions and then pause and check in with you guys. And I'm not really looking at the chat window right now. I'm just looking at my notes. So just bear with me. And another thing that I'm starting to do with these office hours is, in case you don't know or didn't get the newsletter, I ask for questions in advance, and then it gives me a chance to think them through a little bit. But then I want to save a little bit of time to just do a speed round for all of you who have some question you have that didn't get answered and you didn't have time to submit it. So just stay tuned for that. We'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, moving on. Krista from Georgia says, I start out playing with proper hand placement on the bow, but as I play, and especially if I play something fast, my pinky finger wants to fly off like I'm drinking a cup of tea. Any advice? Well, that reminds me, I have a cup of tea and I'm gonna let my pinky fly off. So good. Rooibos. Okay, so I'm a tea nerd, drink a lot of tea. Okay, Krista. So first off, if your pinky's flying off, it's not necessarily wrong. In fact, it just depends what your style is and what you're doing. You may have noticed that old-time fiddlers choke up on the bow and that they often will raise their pinky anyway, and sometimes even the ring finger. So let's just get that out of the way. It's not necessarily wrong. I teach a more classical hold because I want you guys to be able to do anything you want to do, ultimately. You may get to the end of FiddleHed and realize, I kind of like classical music. I want to learn a little bit of that. Then you don't have to totally relearn. All right, so the basic positioning I hold is somewhat based in classical, and it involves keeping your pinky on the bow. So the thing is, if you just have the bow on the strings, your pinky is not as important as the other strings. pinky becomes really important when you have to lift. And you'll have to do that in more advanced things, technically advanced things, like classical music or maybe some bluegrass. So then the pinky, it's really important to have that pinky there. Notice also, a side note, you want your fingers to be very naturally curled and relaxed. Okay, so we need the pinky, and just a quick kind of trick for you, Krista, because if you can't help having this happen, play something and then practice lifting, because it's going to be, if you try to lift it with your pinky, you're going to notice quite a strain in your hand up here. I don't know what these muscles are called, but when you have your pinky there, there's much less strain. So one way for you to quickly overcome that habit that you want to break about the pinky lift falling off is just play something, simple tune, whatever, and then lift. Or maybe just do even smaller bits. Lift, make a little circle with your lift. And then that'll force your pinky down perhaps. I'm not sure that'll happen, but I think it will. I think you'll naturally need to do that. The other main thing I'll offer you is to use a bit of like focused practice on this using micro practice techniques that I talk about a lot throughout the site. And basically with micro practice, we focus on a particular challenge, in this case the pinky thing, and we start with the simplest possible thing, which is just having the bow on the strings, holding it, not even playing. Now, can you keep your pinky from flying off? Probably. Now try to do an open D. If it flies off here, then you have to stay here and work at this point. However, if you're able to do that without it flying off, then try first finger. And if that works out okay and your finger's not flying off, try open to 1. And maybe it flies off there, then you know that you've reached your edge. So with micro practice, we're always trying to like make things a little bit harder and more challenging until you get to your edge, all right? And then you know, okay, that's where I really need to play with my practice and focus to get that thing. And then basically you'll work on it a little bit, and then like I mentioned in the last question, you can let it go and go to something else, and just don't try to focus on that the whole practice session on your pinky or whatever the problem is. Go and play a song, and then go back and be like, okay, I'm going to try to not lift my pinky for the next couple minutes. All right. So again, that practice is called interleaving, and it's something I just learned about. Okay, so I think that explains it. So, and then just so you know, the progression of, if you're working on any technical thing, you would start with an open string, single fingered notes, intervals like open to 1 or 1 to 3, and then simple scales. Maybe that's where you'll hit your edge and that will become hard. Then you do tune phrases like carry polka. If you don't hit your edge there, try the whole A part. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, cool. So before asking the next question, I have a question for you guys, and that is, what is your biggest challenge on the fiddle? Just take a moment to let everybody in the session know this. And why am I asking this? I want you all to know that we're all learning, we're all struggling, and that you're not alone with this. So whatever level you're at, there's something that's hard for you, that's really bugging you, or maybe even gnawing at your soul deep late at night. So for me, I think the biggest challenge is simply practicing during the day when I'm freshest, and I'm having trouble finding and creating a routine in which I do that. I usually end up practicing at night when I'm really tired, falling asleep, and I'm still doing it, but I want to be able to do it at a better time during the day. So just take a moment and share with everybody what is challenging for you. And I'm just going to take a look as we do this. Sorry. Okay. Not making my dogs howl. That's a good one. That's a good goal. Kathy. Left wrist tension. Keeping time. That's a good one too. There's a lot that we can explore with playing in time. Staying on pitch. That's a great challenge that most people face. Reaching fourth finger in third position. That's a good one too, Lisa. Patience to practice. Catherine. Yeah. Well, somehow, Catherine, you got to make it fun. Anyway, I'm not going to try to keep up with all these, but thank you all for keep on writing this so that we all know that we're in a kind of the same boat. We may be working on different things, but we're all trying here. So, okay. So I'm going to get back to our questions. Thank you for your patience. I couldn't get my printer to work today, and so I'm kind of going between different windows on my computer. All right, so moving on to Owen. Hey Owen, thanks for a question. Owen's been a Fiddlehead for a little while, and he's a very kind soul, so appreciate that you're still with us. So let's see. In your lesson on triad scales, you mentioned that each triad represents a chord. I can play chords with 2 notes. Are these triads 3-note chords? Okay, so that's a good question. So the short answer is yes. So like a triad is a 3-note chord. If you're playing piano, so let's look at it. For those of you who don't know, triad is just a series of 3 notes that outlines a chord. And I'm not sure how much deeply I'm going to explain what a triad is right now, but I'm going to play one for you. So if we're in D major, a D major triad would be open D, which is the first note, the second finger, which is the 3rd degree of the step, the 3rd step of the scale, and then the 5th step, which is open A. That's a D major triad. And I'm going to give you a flash lesson on building chords on the fiddle. Okay, so the fiddle, we have to pick 2 out of those 3 because without doing a lot of intense string crossing, which is very busy and might be kind of distracting, we can really only do two strings at once and have it kind of sound smooth and nice. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll take that original thing I showed you, the triad. We're gonna pick 2 out of 3 notes to play. So if this is D major triad, we can pick either D and A, and that makes a D major chord, or we can pick the second finger in open A, and that makes a D major chord. We could also pick the second finger, and instead of playing open D, we play D with the 4th finger on G. So with those 3 notes, we have those combinations. Any of those will work as a D major chord. So say I'm doing Arkansas Traveler. Do 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 do, and I'm just playing the backup part on fiddle. Da na 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 na. The easiest chord always is just, if you can, do an open 2 open strings, open D and A. And then you could also do this chord, D2 and open A. Do 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 do, or D2 and G4. Do 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 do. And I'm not changing the chords yet, but you could. Okay. So I've got a lot more lessons on this, and I'll put them in the office hours notes. I have a whole series of lessons on chord backup, but we could, sticking with the same chord, we could play the higher octave of it. So what we just did was D, F sharp, A. We could do the higher octave, which would start A3 and be D, F sharp, A. Same letter notes, but these are higher sounding. And then we can just pick 2 out of the 3 again. So that makes a D chord. That's A3 and E1. And then A3 and E3 makes a D chord. All right. And so, okay, so that's a quick, sorry it's so quick, but for those of you who've already learned this, I don't want to spend the whole time on it. I really could spend the whole lesson on this. So, or on any of these questions, I think. So by default, a lot of these answers are a little shorter and you'll have to explore further with it. But Owen's question was about something called the Triads Scale, which is this thing I came up with. I came up with the name, I'm sure it's been done before, but it's basically doing a triad on every step of the scale, the D major scale. All right, and that would be the triad scale for D major. All those notes are in D major. And so Owen's original question was, how would you make the, are these triad chords 3-note chords? And I just wanted to close this question by saying you could do the same process for any of those chords or any triad. Sorry if this is all going by quick and fast. I feel like I just realized I feel like I'm talking really fast. I'm going to try to slow down. So the first step we already did, and then the next step, the triad scale. So you could do the same process. Those are your 3 notes. You can just pick 2 of the 3, or these 2. So this particular chord would be E minor. So we could pick D1 and A1, or D3 and A1. So just one last point. Why bother with chords? Well, as a fiddle player, you don't need to know them, but they can really make your playing sound more interesting. If you learn how to play chords, you can be more useful. You can be you can play with other people and play backup. You can also start to add chords to your tunes. Here's a Shokin Farewell with chords added. So you can really add a lot of color and fill in a lot if you know chords, or you can play backup, which is very useful. Okay, and this leads to our next question. Barb from Chicago. How are you, Barb? She asks, when playing backup fiddle, how do you determine the best way to play the chords? Question. The typical chopping backup, she means this. The typical chopping backup doesn't always seem appropriate. What about the rhythmic train style chopping, she asks. So train is this. And what to do with slower songs like The Wayfaring Stranger or Angel Band. Okay, so that's a great question, and the chord, so there's the chop rhythm. I actually, for some reason, I kind of shy away from that. It just kind of feels like I feel like a robot when I do that, and I like kind of the variation and the feeling I get more from using that train beat and Hoedown. So the train beat, I'm just going to use D major, simplest chord I think to start with, which is just open D and open A. So it's basically all eighth notes. But we to get a good feel with it, you would put an accent on the second and fourth beats, like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. To create that accent, you would give it a little kind of press or a little grit. All right. It'll take a while. This is like one of those bowing things that you could really practice, 20 minutes throughout a session, every single day. You just do it on open strings. Another great way to practice these chord rhythms is to make little patterns where you alternate between a single note and a double stop. So we can go like, I'll do it in super slow-mo for you. So I'm going to do single, single, double, single, 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 double, single. All right, and then once you get that, just speed it up a bit. And then you can play with how much you use the double versus the single. And then basically use that to play chords with. And we'd play like a series of chords called a chord progression that are particular to a song or a tune. So Arkansas Traveler. Another similar one is Hoedown. So instead of 4/8 notes, we'd have a quarter and 2/8, and that would sound like long, short, short, long, short, short. And then we bring it up to speed in the same beat, so that was the same accent. Two beats 2 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. You could also do the single double stop thing, like long, short, short, long. Single, double, single, double, single, single, double, single, single, double, single, single. Side note, for those of you who want to learn to play faster, there's a few quick tips. You can learn to play very slow with a metronome. You can also just use less energy. The tendency is when you go faster, you want to press harder and use more energy. Actually back off with your energy. So the last part of her question is what to do with slower songs. And I recommend for that either quarter notes, half notes, or other long notes. So like, say you're doing a Shogun Farewell, and so that was a waltz, and that would have been dotted half notes. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Basically, if you're playing on a song, you want to add something to it. You're not the star. If you're doing a chord backup, you're not the star, you're not the center of attention. You want to add something that's going to make it sound even better. And that might mean not playing the whole time too. So I feel like there's an art form to playing on songs, and as a fiddle player, you can really make what you do have more impact if you maybe bring it in later. And bring it in for, like, it becomes much more powerful of an addition to hold off and then bring in something really nice, like a simple backup part, or just little fills, which are, that it's a whole art form to playing on songs. But in a nutshell, just kind of listen to what is the minimal thing you can do to make that song really shine. You're not the star. You're not playing the fiddle tune now, right? You don't have the spotlight. You have to add to this song. What can you give to it? All right. So hopefully that answers your question. Just gonna check in, make sure. Okay, things look okay from Yuri. to check in with her. Yuri's the editor and a huge help with FiddleHed. Okay, so I'm just going to pause on the regular questions and ask you all, just if you could help me out and ask and let me know, does anybody have any question about the website, how it works? Is there anybody who is trying to figure something out and their question isn't being answered? If so, I'm just taking a moment to check in with you guys, and I'll try to answer one or two questions related to that. So I just realized that it may not be as easy as it, because I work on the site all the time. It's kind of obvious to me, but I'm not seeing any questions come up, so I might just move on. Okay, so well, I'm gonna get back to, okay, how do I use the practice journal? So unfortunately I can't, the way I'm doing the live stream now, it would be good if I could go to the site and have you guys see it. But basically the practice journal is a third-party app. You just have to sign up for it, and then once you sign up, you can use the practice journal. It's an online thing. It's at the bottom of most of the lesson pages, and you'll see a tab under the practice toolkit. You'll see a tab for your practice journal, and then once you sign up for the company that does the app is called, of course, Books. And once you sign up, you can use that to keep track of what you're practicing. So, hello. Want to say hello?
Sure.
Here's Melissa.
Hey. Hi, everyone. I hope you're well.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
See you in a bit.
Okay.
Basically, and for some of you might be wondering, what is this and why do I need it? It's basically, if you use some kind of journal, it doesn't have to be the journal that I provide, but it will help you remember what you're working on and bring more awareness to your practice. So if you write something, a question you have today, like, oh, I'm really struggling with getting a good double stop tone, then when you start again tomorrow, you can look at your practice journal and know exactly what you have to work on. And that sort of process will make your practice more productive, because then you won't be just sort of floundering around every time you sit down to play. You'll be like, this is what I'm working on now. I know exactly these things. Some of you may not need that. You remember, I actually really like having a tool of something to help me remember. Okay, so if you still have any questions on that, please email me, and with any of these. But let's see, I'm gonna just look. Let's see. Kelly, it would be cool if there was a list or group of things to practice every day. I'll do a lesson and we'll say to practice a certain bit every day, like little lifts for a while, but then I forget. Okay, so that's a good idea. I do have suggested weekly practice at the beginning of the module pages. There's like a week 1, try these things, week 2, try these things. But this is a good idea, Kelly. Like, I'm just trying to think out loud if you guys would benefit from having a general thing I say to all of you, like practice little lift, every day. Like maybe you're asking like get an email and, hey, try this, or do you want a very particularized thing, like for you, like what you need to practice, which would be, I'm not sure how I would do that. Okay, but thanks for your question. I'm going to consider all these things very closely. Let's see. Okay, so somebody says it doesn't FFWRA, I don't know how to say your name, begins FF. It doesn't always say that I've completed bits when I have. This is a bit frustrating. We are working on that. Thank you for pointing it out. So she's talking about there's a little wheel that when you finish a lesson, it kind of gives you the full. So I've been going through the site and trying to correct all those things. So I think a lot of them are up to date, but as we change things, then those get thrown off. So apologies for that. We are working on that though. Let's see. Eileen asks, the website is really accessible. In the basic section, do you have the drones for tuning all the G, D, A, and E chords? Yes, those drones are in something called the Practice Toolkit. If you go to the bottom of the page, you'll see a Practice Toolkit, and you'll see the basic drones, which are, and I think in those, we don't have all 12. There's 12 notes possible in Western harmony. I think the ones we have there are G, D, A, and E, which are the most popular ones, not to mention the most popular scales on the fiddle, because they have lots of open strings. So anyway, we have those drones. We have also C, F, and B flat. So check that out. Okay, thanks for your question. Catherine, I just learned the song Drowsy Maggie. Do you have any similar tunes with a fast tempo? Well, Catherine, I would say that Swallowtail Jig is very similar. So Drowsy Maggie is... So Swallowtail is a different kind of tune. It's a jig, but you still have to do some similar technical things. So I would learn Swallowtail Jig. I would look at Devil's Dream, because you have to do a lot of string crossing and fingering. Or Harvest Home. All right, those might help. Okay, cool. Let's see, Shauna. Sometimes when I try to print a song using a PDF, then it takes a PDF link at the bottom of the song. It takes me to an error page. Thank you for pointing that out, Shauna. There are a few broken PDF links scattered throughout the site. If you find one, please email me, and I put it on a fix list, and I eventually get to it, and I do my best to get back to you, whoever pointed it out, and say, thank you for telling me that the site was broken and I fixed it. So yeah, there are a few of those lingering from early on that need to be fixed. Okay. Elizabeth, is Melissa a fiddler too? No, she's not. She's not. She's good at a lot of other things. She's very kind, and she's a good person to talk to. All right. Susanna DeBoer, that looks like a really high shoulder pad. Could you show it to us and tell us what kind it is? Sure, Susanna. This is a super high-tech shoulder rest. It's called the Bon Musica. I love this thing. Like a lot of things I've learned, I learned about this from a student just like you. A lot of what I know seriously is learned from students. This is the Bon Musica. I will put a link to it if I remember. There's also, if you go to the support section on the website, there's a support page. I now have the recommended gear link there. So it's just a simple page with all the recommended gear. And that leads to my next question. Oh, Larry Reese, you say your audio is way out of sync with your video. Okay, differing opinions. Okay, back to it. So I was just asked about this shoulder rest, and it's a gear question, and somebody else wrote in with the gear question. I'm going to flip back to the submitted questions, and it was Richard from Northern Utah asks. I am thinking about buying a new... Actually, I'm going to get to that later. I'm going to try to go at questions in order because this will help make it easier. I'm going to get to that question in a minute. Sorry. But it'll help make that indexing process easier later if I go in the order that I have them right now. So just sit tight. I'll get to a question about what fiddle to buy. Okay, so... an unknown person from an unknown place asked this question. They asked, the tone on the open strings is great. So they're playing, their tone is great. But when I finger a note, the tone deteriorates. Am I pressing too hard? So this is a good question, especially relevant to beginners, but then there's some things for more intermediate and advanced players to be learned from it. So So it's true, if you play an open string, it won't take you as that super long to just get a decent sound. But then once you start fingering as a beginner, you'll notice that the tone quality is not as good, all right? And the first thing I want to say is this is completely a normal thing to happen for beginning students. So just take heart, it's okay, and with practice, if I don't tell you anything else, if you simply keep practicing those notes, your fingers are gonna get stronger, your tone is gonna get stronger and better, okay? So it just takes a bit of time. I mean, getting a good sound is a lifelong project. I'm still learning things about how to finger better and get a better tone, okay? So, but what I would suggest to whoever asked this and to any of you interested is to, once you can get a good sound on your open strings, and now you're starting to add fingerings. Let's say your D3, which is G, sounds just really weak. What I would do is stay on that note a long time and use a G drone. So we're on G now. So I'm just gonna use my little iTabla app. And so basically the drone, this is iTabla. There's also, as you know, drones on the site, on the practice toolkit. So I feel this helps your tone because a lot of it is just you relax into it. You blend with this sound of the drone. And it takes a little bit of the mental pressure off to sound good because you have this sound that's kind of supporting you, all right? And so then you can just stay with this note. It also makes it more interesting to just play one note. And you can stay with it longer, all right? You can then do little exercises where you practice placing it, like D3 twice, and then open D. So remember, it's easier to play open strings. Use those as like leverage. They're like a friend that helps you get the harder thing, right? So you have a good tone here. If we alternate like this, it'll probably make the D3 sound better. Right? So whatever note you're having trouble fingering, let's say it was D low 2, which is F. Do the same process and maybe alternate with an open string. Or other fingers. But our focus here is on D low 2. Maybe after doing that a while, I go back to a single note. How's that sounding? And just kind of pay attention to, like, as things start to sound better. To connect this with an earlier question, you could focus for a week on one note. Just see, like, how much better can I make D3 sound? And keep track of that in your practice journal. Be like, okay, I really want to get better at D3. I'm gonna play it every day and give it extra love every day. 5 minutes just on D3 a day. And then at the end of the week, kind of assess, like, is it a little bit better, all right? So that kind of focused practice is, not everybody has the patience for it, but again, like, if you mix it in with other things in your practice, it won't be as daunting. Like, maybe 5 minutes is too long to do in one stretch. So again, this is the interleaving idea. You kind of split that up. Do this for like a minute, and then move on to a tune, and then back to and then do something else. Okay, cool. Moving on. Next question. Tom S. asks, how to end tunes that leave you hanging? So he asked this for the last office hours, and I did not get to it, so I'm getting to it now. And he was talking about a tune called The Wind That Shakes the Barley. And so that tune ends like. And so it ends on a note that's kind of awkward. A1. And so basically what he's asking is how to end tunes. And a lot of times when you're learning a tune, it'll give you the last note and it'll be pretty clear. But if it's not clear, like, because sometimes they're written in such a way that they lead back to the beginning, then you have to kind of figure out what is the last note. So this tune is in the key of D. So let's just take a look. So the reason I say that is that if you know the scale of the tune, that becomes a big clue in figuring out how to best end it. All right. So we could end it on open D, but at this point you may be like, well, maybe that's not the right last note. So there's some other things you could ask yourself. If the root note or open D in this case isn't right, try the fifth, which would be A. So we can try that now. That to me sounds right, but let's experiment. Let's do the other way. It's both kind of work, okay? So I'll leave it up to you, but those are some hints. I think that most people would probably end this one on the open A. And one last hint when trying to figure out what would be the last note of a tune would be to look at the starting note of the tune. So for When the Chicks Barley, it's open A. So now I'll try the ending with that. So open A also works. It's the starting note, also works as the ending note, and again, that's the fifth. I'm just going to repeat. The fifth is the fifth step of the D major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Open A. The root, or the first, is the first step, which in this case is D. If I did a G major scale, the root or the first step is G, and the fifth is D. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so I'm not going to get too much more into the theory. I hope that helps, Tom. I'm going to move on. Next question, Misha from Oregon. How you doing, Misha, up there in Oregon? So he says, I hear even in basic tunes, you sometimes slide a note or two. How do you do that? Very beginner question. Sorry. So this is actually not a beginner question. In fact, slides are something I strongly recommend you don't do as a beginner, especially as an absolute beginner. Why? Because when you're a beginner, you really want to learn the basic finger positions really well. You want to learn like the D major scale positions really well. All right. If you start doing sliding too early, your sense of like where those notes lie will be thrown off. Okay, so it'll become, and plus it will become a crutch if you do it too early. All right, so this is all a suggestion though. I'm sure there's some great fiddlers who started sliding from the day one, from the day they were born, and started fiddling because that's how they learned. But my suggestion to you though is, if you're a beginner, do your best to not slide, to find the note exactly and as precisely as possible. And I would wait on sliding until you're like an intermediate level, like you're already doing like fourth finger and low first. And anyway, so that's my suggestion on that. But that's not really answering Misha's question. So he's asking about slides a little bit. And it's something that I want to do lessons on very soon, just so you all know where I'm headed and what I'm working on. I'm finishing up the note reading for fiddlers course, and then I'm going to get into working on a few technical things. Slides and vibrato will be the next things. And the way I teach it is that they're sort of interrelated. So I'll probably be doing some lessons with some very focused exercises on slides soon. But here's a preview of it, and what it is we can just do a very simple exercise to get slides, all right? And basically we'd start with let's start with second finger, F sharp. And so what you would do is you would play low 2. You play low 2 to 2, and just play those separate notes, and then slide it. Separate notes, slide. That's the gist of the whole exercise, all right? You could do it with a rhythm, like. That's tuck up. So you do, as with all kind of things that you practice, go between a basic version and a variation, or between something easier and something more challenging. So we do tucka with no slide, and then a little slide. All right. So that's the basic exercise in a nutshell. We can create all kinds of different ways to practice it based on that core idea, all right? Alternating between basic and a variation. And the last thing I'll say about slides is that you can do them in a subtle way or an obvious way. And it's good to practice both. So when you first start doing a slide, maybe just start with this again and make it really greasy, long slide from low 2 to 2. But a whole other way to do a slide is to not travel as far, so not as big, not as wide of a slide. Like that's wide. Make it just a smaller distance that your finger travels, and make it quicker and more transparent. So there's a subtle slide, and here's a more obvious slide. Subtle. All right, so play with those two differences, and play a little piece with it, a little piece without it. This is a core principle in the Irish Fiddle Journeys course, where I teach like adding variation to simple Irish melodies, and you view each little phrase as a little experiment, and you add that variation, and then you take it away, and you cycle on it in a loop. And this core practice can be used to practice anything challenging, any new variation. Okay, moving on to the next question. So this comes from Richard in northern Utah. He asks, I'm thinking about buying a new fiddle in the $700 plus range. What brands would you recommend looking at? So the short answer, Richard, is I recommend Fiddler Shop. It's a great online family owned and run business. I think they're out of Florida, and they have a unique way of selling high quality instruments for a lower price, because they make them overseas, I think in China, a lot of them, but then they hand set them up with people actually setting them up at their workshops, and so they're actually very good quality. And I looked it up. There's one in your price range called the Fiddlerman Artist Violin Outfit. I'll put a link to it in a few days when the show notes come up. And one thing I recently learned about Fiddler Shop that's I think is really cool is that they will, if you want a particular fiddle or violin, they will actually make a special video for you, and somebody will play the ones you're interested in, and so you can hear, like say you're interested in 3 different ones, a person will actually make you, Richard, in northern Utah, a video and show him playing, they'll play each one so you can hear the difference, okay? So I just like them more than like say using Amazon where you can get, cheap stuff, and which is maybe ideal for certain things, but I just like the idea of supporting like a smaller business, and they actually have really good make really good fiddles. So, all right, thanks for your question. Next question, Abra in San Diego, or is it Abra? In Espanol, Abra is open, or I think it is, or maybe it's it's related to open. So. She's asking, or he's asking, I'm really struggling with timing on when to start fiddling in a song. I always struggle with the first 4 bars of a song the most because I don't understand when to enter. Then I play catch up on the first few notes. I'm especially having difficulty with waltzes. The 3-4 times throw me for an even harder loop with this problem. Any suggestions? Okay, so this is a good question. I would say that the first thing you can do is learn the beginning of the song really, really well, okay? Whatever the song is, master the beginning, okay? And be able to just do it definitely without reading anything. And in fact, that's a good thing to say first. Like whatever tune you're trying to learn and play, you're trying to play with others, get to a point where you just have it memorized, okay? And then really really do extra practice on the first few bars. Another thing you can do is to, if possible, like do little loops in which you listen to the first 4 bars and then you play them. You listen and then play, and that's really helping your ear kind of basically you're practicing audiation, being able to internalize the music. So maybe if it was Arkansas Traveler, you keep using that example. Let's use a different example. So you asked about waltzes. So Planksty Irwin. And then you would listen to a recording of just those first few bars. Now if you're on FiddleHed and learning the tune there, then go to the first quarter and play that little the audio chunk for that, and simply listen and then play. And keep that loop going and practice listening and playing. Another way to practice this, and we're talking about just internalizing it so that music is just an automatic thing. It's just like speaking your mother tongue. All right, so another way to do it is to, on your own, do the audiation process. So you can play and then sing something. Do 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 do. Whistle it. You can hum it. And then try to do that in your head. This is the real Jedi Knight practice of audiation. So can you hear it in your head? All right. So I think if you do this, it will really help you with finding your place in songs. Another thing you can do is practice just counting what the song is. So if it's a waltz, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Listen to a recording, or if you're hearing other people play live, just take time to listen and count, internally or quietly to yourself. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Use your fingers might help. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You can even count your knuckles. This is kind of a weird way, but for 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3. and just kind of, and what I like about using your fingers in addition to counting out loud or versus just in your mind is it gets your body involved. And I think it really helps you remember things and get more involved with the music. So that's about it for those questions. Thank you, Abra. I hope that helps you to improve your timing and play along and join in songs more easily. Okay, moving on. Okay, Mike from Frank's Fiddle asks, I'm starting to experiment more with texture and slurring, and I find that slurring really messes up my rhythm for the whole tune. I've tried looping and get it okay on small chunks, but when I add it to the tune, it completely throws off my timing, and I find I never slur the same sections. I know it will come in time, but is there a trick to getting slurring rhythm down? It's a really good question, and from the way what you've said, Mike, you're really on the right track, because you said, I know it will come in time. And I feel like you just continue your practice, continue to practice with awareness, you're gonna get this. And I don't even need to say anything more, but I will, okay? But you already have a lot of the right ideas in place. So what I would basically say is the process of micro practice, which I talked about over and over in other places and earlier today, of starting with atomic little bits and then expanding out would apply here again. So you said, Mike, that you're able to do slurring on small chunks, but it's harder when you do the whole tune. So what that suggests to me is that, so you can do those small chunks, don't jump to the whole tune. Do a bigger chunk. So like, say you're trying to do slur 2, separate 2 on Arkansas Traveler. Can't keep going back to that tune today. And you just want to add slur, or let's do something new. Let's do Blackberry Blossom. You want to do slur 2, separate 2, which is slur 2, separate, separate, slur 2, separate, separate. So, and you want to add that to a tough tune. Okay. So you would basically start with one little 4-note section. All right, then you would do the next 4-note section. And then you would put those two together. You don't just jump to the whole tune at that point. So it's a very meticulous process, I know, and it might just seem like drudgery to some of you, but the more you do it, the quicker it becomes, trust me. So, and plus, if you really get this bowing on a small piece, you might find that you can do it a little bit easier on a bigger piece, and then at a certain point, you get enough momentum where you can just do it on the whole thing. But so what I'm suggesting is, then you put together a bigger piece with this particular slur pattern, and absolutely master that. Okay, until it's comfortable. Mastering sounds kind of pretentious maybe, but whatever. Just get to the point where you can do it with flow. Okay, I'm not asking you to be Itzhak Perlman or Mark O'Connor. Just do it with flow, and you're not thinking about it, you're just playing it. And then add a little bit more to that. So the next bit is, those are the next 4 notes. Now do a bigger phrase. And do that a few times. Then do the next phrase. So I think you see where this is going. Do the whole process for the whole second quarter of the tune, which is this. Okay? And then you put together the first and second quarters. If you can do that, fine, then keep going. But if you can't, then Mike, you've hit your edge, and you want to go back and forth between that. You want to cut it back to something small and then something big. All right? But, at a certain point you might just be like, you throw caution to the wind, I'm going to try it on the whole tune. And if you can't get it, no big deal, but sometimes there's something to be said for just diving in, and you've been doing all this very analytical, what I call micro practice, and then you're just like, forget about it, I'm just going to do it on the whole tune. And and that's a more macro practice. You just play. You don't think too much about it. And I would say also, Frank, that at that point, don't, like do the work on small chunks, and if you're not getting it on the whole thing, don't worry about it. It'll come. It's a bit of a degree of faith here that if you just keep playing, eventually you're going to be able to do the whole thing. And that kind of goes with all these questions. There's a little bit of a leap of faith that happens with practice. Like, I'm here to help you and answer some questions but ultimately, the more you practice and learn how to practice, not just get better at those technical things, but learn how to practice better, that you have a little bit of faith that you're gonna figure it out eventually. It's frustrating because you want it right now. I mean, I know how that feels with a lot of different things. I want those problems fixed right now, but gosh darn it, they're not fixed, and they're not getting fixed anytime soon. So that's just more of a philosophy, Mike, to help you with this. But one last thing that's more specific answer to your question is with any bowing, any technique, slurring or something like bouncing, whatever, do it on a scale first. Scales are like the simplest possible tune, and they're where you experiment with things. And so absolutely master that bowing on a scale at different speeds, super slow, and then go to your fastest tempo too. If you do it with a metronome, you'll be shocked at how easily it starts to come out in tunes. All right. So anyway, hope that answers your question. I'm gonna keep going. I think I only have one more from the. No, I don't. Okay. So. I'm now gonna just do what I like to call the speed round. I'm gonna go back. I haven't been looking at your chat. Sorry. So anybody has a question now, please ask it that hasn't been. And I'm just gonna kind of do like more quick form answers for you. So Cynthia Bourgeois asks, so the slur is the long and the long short. No, that's not quite true. I mean, for this particular case it is, because we take 4 eighth notes and we slur the first 2 to get slur 2 separate 2. So in this particular case, Cynthia, you are correct. Just to be clear, slur, for those of you who are unsure or haven't heard of this, maybe beginners, is playing more than one note in a bow. So we can play 2 notes in a bow, 3 notes, 4 notes, 8 notes, 16 notes, and so on. All right, cool. All right, Marnie, left wrist collapses in and gets tense, not sure how to keep it in position. So I would say, Marnie, that micro practice again, but add the addition of kind of taking time throughout your practice to focus on your body a little bit, to pay attention to your body. Focus on your breathing. This is something I'm working on too. Focus on your breathing. And then ask yourself, is anything really tense? Is my shoulder tense? No. Yes, maybe. Is my wrist tense? So if you are noticing this, Marnie, then you're already like 90% of the way there. What you have to do is pause every once in a while, pay attention to your wrist, see if you can relax it. If you can relax it, good. Then try to play an open D. Is it relaxed there? Good. We're doing the micro practice thing. Now we're going to do something more complex, do a few notes. If it tenses up there, then you got to work on it with just those simple few notes, and then you would do a little focused work. Do that, just kind of pay attention to your wrist for maybe a few minutes, go do something else, then return to your wrist. That's the interleaving idea. Okay, I hope that helps, Marnie, but think of it as like fiddle yoga. You're bringing, if any of you have practiced yoga, you bring attention to your body and your breath and how they're connected, and you really just put awareness on things. And it's something that I want to teach more of with FiddleHed, because it is so physically challenging, is to find ways to remember, oh yeah, I have to breathe still. So you just take little breaks to breathe, pay attention to your body, okay? That's the answer in a nutshell. All right, cool. Heather Dugan asks, how can I make the E string sound better? And this is a good question. A lot of people, E is probably the string that people struggle with most. And what I usually do when I'm teaching people in person is I just have them kind of make friends with the E. Just do really just friendly little bows, like start with really little gentle bows. Don't expect anything more at the beginning with that. Just kind of just enjoy that. Just try to enjoy the sound of those little eighth notes. Use very little bow. Lighten your touch a little bit. The E string needs less energy. If you press too hard, it's going to be very grating, right? Whereas the G string needs a little extra energy. And as you play more, you'll start to really feel how you need a little more energy there and a little less on the E string. And then once you get that open E sounding okay, then start adding fingerings, and then start going between A and E. And then going between A and E will help your hand figure out, yeah, on the A we need a slightly more pressure, on the E we need slightly less. Okay? All right, hope that helps, Heather. Okay. Cindy, also got a thing called Wonder Thumb, which helps the left thumb relax. How do you feel about using these aids? Also the Bow Buddy, which places your finger correctly on the bow hold. I think these aids are cool, Cindy. I've heard of them. I have one in-person student named Dan who uses the Wonder Thumb, and he really likes it. I'll put a link to it for you folks in the index page, but it's just a little device that helps your left hand find the right position. I haven't seen anybody use the Bow Buddy, but I think use what you can. You guys are all, I have so much admiration for all of you, and here is why. You are all learning a pretty difficult instrument on your own. And sure like FiddleHed has got a lot of resources for you, but still, you're doing it on your own. And so I think things like the Wonder Thumb and whatever, you need these little things to help you. I'm totally for it, okay? And again, I have nothing but respect for you guys for doing this. Like I was lucky, I had a teacher. I mean, I had to learn a lot about how I do these lessons and this whole process on my own. And something you're getting that I didn't get was like the micro practice, drone practice I didn't have. I only discovered recently. Looping practice I didn't have. But you guys are doing so much on your own. I really commend you all. I really mean it. It just strikes me right now how courageous you all are for trying this, and you're basically learning from videos and audio. I know some of you have in-person teachers, but a lot of you don't. So good for you. See ya, Frank. All right. Okay, well, I think that I don't see any more questions, and so I'm just looking. Wait, Lisa, I need to practice more. Oh, Lisa asked, this is a good question, I'll answer it. Lisa Brookins, I need to practice better to be more consistent than as a default. Real playing will happen as a byproduct, question mark. So in a nutshell, what I think of as playing is when you get to a state of flow in which you're not thinking too hard about what you're doing. You're not thinking, oh God, I gotta relax my left wrist, and I gotta play the tune more slowly. And what else do I have to remember? It's in D major, so I have to use, you don't want to be thinking all those things while you play. You don't want to be thinking about finger numbers. I understand if you have to for where you're at, but ultimately you want to be just hearing music in your mind and have it come out through your fiddle. And the practice methods I teach are designed, I mean, they could be better maybe, but that's the intention, is that you learn to loop on something so that this is the beauty of looping, so that eventually you're not having to think about what you have to do. You have a small enough thing that you start to get it. You know, like if you take a little bit of a tune, Kesh Jig. You've been looking at the tabs. After a while, you don't need those tabs. You can even play without the audio or anything. You can just close your eyes and play it. If you really keep doing that, the magical thing that happens is that it just starts to be music. You start to play. All right. So, okay. So anyway, I think that's it. I think it looks like that's it for the questions. And oh yes, Cynthia, there are Triad Scales on the FiddleHed site. They're part of the Ultimate membership in the Art of Fiddling section. Okay, so again, thank you all for those of you who are still here, and for those of you who watch this later. I'm glad hope this is helpful, and I'm going to try to do this in a month. And yeah, it's been great. I learned so much from doing this from you guys, and I really appreciate all your good questions and so many kind comments. Believe me when I say that part of what keeps me going through all the kind of business stuff I got to do to keep this ship afloat, and all the headaches and frustrations with the technical things you may have noticed, that your kind comments and just the friendliness I get from you are really help to keep it going and makes it worthwhile. Okay, we'll see you soon. So long.